it breaks my heart. It makes me want to cry because I'm like, who could ever harm or hate or care to threaten a family and culture that is so like wholesome, grounded, accepting, and loving.
My guest today is Adriana Rosie, better known online as the non-Jewish Nanny, where she has amassed millions of views and likes for her entertaining and educational TikTok and Instagram content in which she provides her perspective as a non-Jewish person looking after children from Jewish families. Listen, for those who may not be acquainted, because you have been blowing up on Instagram and TikTok with your content. For those who may not be acquainted, how would you describe your online presence, and when did you start making content about nannying for Jewish children?
Well, so in the summer, I had some free time and I started to just put stuff on TikTok regardless of the topic. But like so much of my life is nannying. I'm a nanny and my kids are all Jewish, but they're Orthodox, so very immersed into the Jewish culture. And so I found that when I was telling my funny stories about my day and my nanny kids, like the funny bit about it was like, oh, and by the way, like I'm not Jewish, so this happened, and this is because they are Orthodox and like they're very immersed into their culture, religion. And so it was a story about, just kosher things, homework, and it could it could be anything that even kids say that are silly. But I found it interesting that the people who took a liking to it, I thought would be either other nannies or other people like me who had no idea about like the Jewish community, but it actually was the people who were Orthodox and Jewish themselves, and they were just so kind. They still are so kind and so in awe that like, oh my gosh, you speak so highly and so sweetly about our religion and culture. And like, then they started to inquire, like, how much do I know? And like, wait, like, who do you work for? Like, what type of Jews do you work for? And so then I started answering their questions, and they were like amazed that I had took the time to like understand their religion and culture and then make videos about it online openly and actually know a lot of the stuff. And they were like, oh my gosh, we're so amazed. And I was like, that's so sweet, but like I have to, because if I'm going to connect with my kids and if I'm going to be a good babysitter, nanny, friend to them, like I have to be able to understand like all the little Yiddish and Hebrew words that they use.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you made a video. One of your videos was like, "I'm so grateful that all of the Orthodox Jewish people love my content and are happy that I'm making positive content. But at the same time, I'm a little bit sad because you shouldn't be this surprised that there's positive content about you guys."
Yeah, like that was another thing. Like I get so many messages of people like thanking me. And like even to start with, my very first job ever, she said to me, oh, and we're Jewish, is that okay? And I thought that was such a weird thing. And I was like, why would she ask me that? Like, of course that's okay. I didn't realize maybe some of the other learning tasks I would have ahead of me, but like, whatever, like it is what it is. And so I feel very sad. Some people have said to me, I'm in my kitchen right now tearing up, like preparing for Shabbat. And like, I just can't believe that there's somebody out here who not only like sees what we do and doesn't think it's weird and hate it, but like they are actually so interested and think it's like endearing, interesting, respectful. And I'm like, of course. And that's what blows my mind. And I guess what I like to share with the Jewish people is even my friends, my roommate, my family, like I tell all these stories that I tell to you guys online. I told that to them after, before this all was a thing. And they're all like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so cute. And like, they love it, they love it too. And so sometimes the anti-Semitic and the harsher and mean voice is louder, which shouldn't always be the case. Like, that's why I think a lot of people are speaking up today because of what's going on. But like, there are people out there like me and my friends who like, we love you guys and we think nothing different of what you do and respect it and respect the culture and religion.
Much appreciated. That's really nice to hear. So I'm really curious, before you started nannying for Jewish families, how much did you know about Jewish people, Jewish culture?
Nothing. Like, nothing. Like, I remember, like, there was maybe one Jewish kid in my high school class, that's it. And he wasn't observant. And so that's one thing to be Jewish and maybe celebrate Hanukkah or have a, like, bar mitzvah. But, like, to, be so observant of, like, all the high holidays. I remember my first time nannying during the high holiday season. I was like, what on earth? Why do these kids have off of school so much? Like, they kept booking me. I was like, okay, sure. This is so weird. It's a random Tuesday. Like, why? But okay. Like, don't you have school? And so that was the thing. Then I would show up to the house and then the parents would be there, or they'd leave. And I'd be like, so, like, why are you off school today? Like, I'm confused. And then they would say, oh, and kids, they don't have a filter. They tell you regardless. Like, they don't care. And so they are like, oh, it's because of this, and it's because during this time the Hashem gave us this, and it was when the Egyptians, they'll go on and on and on and tell me all about it, and I'm like, oh, okay, nice to know. And then we'll be coloring pictures about it, making like the lulav, the esrog, whatever, making that separate projects, the sukkah, like all that type of stuff. So it was very thrown onto me, but like that's why it's so great to learn it from the perspective of kids, and I feel really happy that I learn it from that perspective because I mean, who could hate on like a little child like teaching you something like that they're so passionate and excited about? Like,
Yeah.
that's why I have such a great connection with them and the culture. I feel like is because the kids.
Yeah, it's really wholesome and nice to sort of watch you video by video learn all these things. Like you'll be talking to your kids, you're like, "Is it pronounced this way?" And they're like, "No, it's this way." You're like,
They
"Sorry,
get
sorry."
they get so mad, and I made the name videos too. I had to get so good at knowing the names because like I felt so bad. I didn't want them to think that they were weird or had a weird name because I couldn't pronounce it because I was too ignorant and not culturally rounded, I feel, to be able to know that. I am luckily have more of a background in diction and language than most people that are, because of my singing background. But like, yeah, now I learn all of their names perfect, and they're so happy when I just say it right. And that's why they all think I'm Jewish as well, because I'm like, oh, hey, Yocheved. Oh, hey, Sarah. Like, just, you got it, like, and
Yeah.
they're very happy about that. So it means a lot to me to try hard.
Yeah, I think even something as basic as getting someone's name right, that really goes a long way. What are some of your favorite things that your kids have taught you?
I love the idea of mitzvah, doing mitzvahs, like, so I love to be able to use that in their day-to-day life, like, oh, that was such a good mitzvah of you, like, thank you for being such a nice girl, like, I really like that concept, and, and that's, once again, going back to so many people think that, like, religion or the culture, regardless, it's weird or it's a cult or whatever they want to say, really, because a mitzvah is essentially the same idea of being a good person and doing a good deed, whether it be for Hashem or for yourself, like whatever it be, you're still being a good person and you're still doing something that's benefiting, helping out someone. And so I like the idea of that. I trying to think, I mean, all the holidays are super fun because I've never experienced the holidays like Sukkot or Sukkot. But I would just say the general idea, I like how the kids, they do everything in their life to try to like serve Hashem even as a child, which I think is so sweet and good.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool that you're having this positive, immersive experience. And you said that you didn't really know much about the Jewish culture beforehand. So I got to ask, were there any assumptions that you had about Jewish people, positive or negative, that you may have had before you started your job that were proven right or wrong?
So, like, no, because I never knew anybody who was Jewish and actually like a religious observant Jew. If anything, they were Jewish, but like I met them at the same nightclub that like I was partying at in college. Like, so for me, I was like, oh, there's absolutely no difference between us other than the fact that I celebrate Christmas and you celebrate Hanukkah. That's literally how I saw it. Like, that's what I saw it as. And that's kind of what I saw Judaism as for such a long time until I started to like be around the kids and then, yeah, I will say that once I was with the kids, there were certain things that I saw that I was a little bit like, like I made my own assumption on it. For example, the shaitels or maybe the modest dressing after I figured kind of out a little bit of it. But then I would get talking more to the kids and the moms especially, and I started to, realize like the Netflix show for unorthodox, like they very much perceive Judaism as a very oppressive religion in that situation. But I talked to my mothers and I asked about like the sheitos, and I asked about that and how they felt about dressing sneas and how they felt about wearing sheitos, and they were like, that documentary got our views completely wrong because we wear sheitos because we want to. Like, we want to honor Hashem and we want to honor ourselves and be a daughter, or like, as I like to say, like a princess of, if you're a daughter of Hashem, you're a princess, you're Snea's queen, you're Snea's princess. And so I tell all my little girls, wow, you look like such a Snea's queen because you're wearing such a beautiful outfit and it just looks so classy, and they love it. And so I was really happy to see that perspective from them. The women who do wear the sheitos and they do dress a certain way, according to their religion, yes, but it's also a choice and there's different levels as well. And I love that.
Totally. And it's amazing that you actually get to hear it directly from people you're in contact with, as opposed to not knowing any Jews and just watching a documentary that a lot of Jews don't really care for. And you're like, oh, this is how it is, when it's not actually. And actually, it's often said that one of the best ways to combat anti-Semitism is through educating oneself about Jewish culture and Jewish people, which is what you're doing. How helpful do you think spending time with Jewish people like you are might be in helping to dismantle people's anti-Semitic preconceptions and prejudices?
Yeah, exactly. You make those preconceived opinions by not knowing and not actually experiencing it. And then once you're with, like I said, I've lived in these people's, like, these houses. Like, I have gone to their dinners, their holidays, and you start to realize, like, oh, they are just like us. Like, they're just like us. They're just like me. And that's like what's so important about so many different cultural and religious, like, differences that we have today, is exactly, it's very easy for you to just take a look at something and make your judgment about it. But then if you actually like are immersed in around, and exactly, who can hate like a kid or think it's, when a kid is telling you, you're like, okay, like, you go with it. And once you're in there, it's very hard to educate somebody though who does not want to be educated. And so that's why I feel like my experience and my videos as well are very, very casual, and they explain and they educate people what my life is like working with the Orthodox community, without sitting here being like, shoving it down their throats of like, hey, this is how it is and you need to accept it. It's basically like, this is my life and why wouldn't I accept it? Because look at how awesome it is. And like, it's so fun to like experience something new and also see. I just did the one about the kosher burger, and that's such a silly example, but it's a very, very thing. I'm thinking, oh, I could never be kosher because I could never give up bacon. And then I try Jewish, like, kosher bacon, beef bacon, and I was like, this is literally amazing. This is better than regular bacon. And it actually, like, look at this burger. Look at the burger I'm showing you. It looks exactly like a regular burger. Like, it's not weird. It's amazing. And it's like, exactly, everything's the same, except maybe they eat at different restaurants or they prepare their food a different way. And like, that's what they feel they want to do. So be it. Like,
Totally. I think that's maybe the best endorsement for Judaism we've ever heard, by the way.
the burger.
The burger, the bacon. So I want to know, from the perspective of someone who is not Jewish, but is close to many Jewish people, what are your thoughts when you see anti-Semitism reported on the news and on social media?
I remember when the first, it was actually a little bit before the media started getting a lot of the, coverage. But yeah, one of the moms had said to me, we have so much security at our synagogue because like we get threats, and like we sometimes do feel unsafe walking to shul on Shabbos, and like we feel unsafe, and people are looking at us, people can tell. And I was so blown away that they felt that way, and they felt that others thought that way about them, because I was like, what? And then it kind of broke my heart. And I have now been in public with my babies with their yarmulkes and their tzitzis, and very Jewish. And I sometimes, like, it breaks my heart. It makes me want to cry, because I'm like, who could ever harm or hate or or care to threaten a family and culture that is so like wholesome, grounded, accepting, and loving, and they keep to themselves, you know, like they do not bother, they do not harm, they're literally revolve their life around worshiping Hashem and living in the best way that they possibly can. And who would want to harm that and damage that? And especially when I think about the kids who I love them like they're my brothers and sister. I love those kids. I look at them with their yarmulkes and stuff, and I'm like, it's sad to me that people could view them on the street and think badly. And then like I'm with them and I'm like, these are my kids right now. They're my kids. Don't you dare do anything to make them feel a certain way.
Oh my God, you've already become a Jewish mother. Have you ever spoken to any of your families that you look after about anti-Semitism?
That's the thing. I never have brought it up because I was so like ignorant to the fact that it was even occurring, and then they had brought it up to me, a couple of the mothers, and I actually think something it could go ingrained like without me even realizing is sometimes I noticed in the beginning, like families, they would introduce themselves to me with their like American name rather than their like Hebrew name. So like for the longest time I worked for a family where I thought the husband's name was Andrew, and that is one of the names, but like he goes by his Hebrew name. And then I learned, I also know the kids, they have their Hebrew names, but they go by, it depends on the family. But I feel like that in itself is sometimes maybe because they don't want to experience any sort of people thinking differently or thinking badly. It's kind of like my last name's Fernandez, and I remember in high school, for the entire of high school, used to write Adriana F. Even though my first name is a very Hispanic name, I didn't want to get bullied because of the fact that, like, they would know my name was Fernandez. Then they would open up questions to ask, what are you? Where are you from? What type of a
Right.
name is that? And that's more of a racism issue rather than, like, anti-Semitism. But it goes in hand in the sense that sometimes I think things were not shown to me as an outsider per se because of maybe fear that like I wouldn't want to continue working for them, or I would have thought it was weird. But I don't have any type of hate like that in my heart that would ever align with anti-Semitism. So now they know that, and so I get the full experience, I feel.
For sure, for sure. It feels like you're already learning through a baptism of fire. And by the way, like another thing is like a lot of Jews, you know, would also consider anti-Semitism racism as well. So when people, the whole thing with the names and stuff on the streets, a lot of people will say that's racism because unfortunately, if you say that's anti-Semitism, there's often this thing where it's like, oh, well, that's just against the religion. That's not racist.
Because so much of the things, if you think about it, a lot of the things I talk about and the culture shocks I experience is the culture of of Judaism. The religion, I would say the religion, being raised in a like religious household, like growing up, I went to private school, Christian school. The religion itself is actually not much of a shocker to me simply because, like my life views align with the whole mitzvah. I say mitzvah driven life, like being a good person because you should feel so thankful that like you have had like everything given to you from above, that type of thing. But like the things that then I do not experience in my own childhood growing up, or like I said, within just in general, would be like the cultural things. So like the washing and the kosher, and even that if that is related to like religion as well, that's a lot of my, not confusion, but my new introduction. And so yeah, I think it's sad, but I think it's interesting for me. I think it's just sad that people think it's weird or a cult, or but I think it's so interesting, and that's why I try to promote it out there on social media. Like, how can it not, like, how can you not think this is interesting or cool or like whatever? Everything is so well thought out in Judaism.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, you're an open-minded person, and I wish more people were like that. What have the responses been to your social media videos, both good and bad?
So I like to say this publicly a lot, and like I said, I'm sure there'll come a day where this is not the case, like knock on wood, but I can maybe count on like one hand, like the mean messages or comments I've gotten, and every single one of those accounts was from a non-Jewish person. And I think it says a lot that I know a lot of creators who are Jewish and put out content about Judaism, and their comments and their inboxes look so hateful and terrifying. Threats, names, harassment, bullying, just putting them down, saying you're a crazy person. And, even in this thing, a lot of Christian accounts will then attack them and say, you're a horrible person. And I'm like, okay, well then this is really saying something, because now here's my account. I'm not Jewish. All of my followers are Jewish, and I have nothing but great comments and amazing messages and kindness and warmth and welcoming. And that right there for me is just kind of like, all right, well, so then who's the worst person here? Because the account where all my audience is Jewish has really no bullying. Yeah, some people might call me annoying or say I'm weird for being obsessed with it. But once again, all those people who say that are not Jewish. And the people who are Jewish are very happy, very thankful. They love my content. And then when you flip to the other spectrum, the hate comments come from those who are not. So I'm like, okay, well, clearly, I think you're proving right there to yourself that, like, whatever it is you believe, you have some issues, because, like, you're not being a good person.
Most definitely. I mean, it sounds like in addition to learning more about Judaism, you're sort of getting an education in anti-Semitism and what that looks like, whereas you may have not really had that beforehand. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because I guess the way I feel, and I did experience this in a past relationship of mine, who I was somebody who was like, oh, like, I just trust that everything happens for a reason. And my partner was like, that's stupid and that's ridiculous. And that's how, like, why would you even do that? Shut up. Don't say that. And for me, I kind of feel like maybe, and this is how I feel about all religions per se, when people are anti-Semitic and they hate it and they don't care, I like to say, okay, maybe I'm completely crazy, or maybe they're completely crazy. Maybe it's all wrong. Nothing exists. There's no God. There's no Hashem. There's nothing. What did they lose in life but for like believing? Like what did they lose? Because I think if anything, they live their life more grounded, more wholesome, more at peace. They worry less. And then, so that's what I used to tell people. Okay, if that's, that's the way you feel, then like, that's the way you feel. But if that's the way I feel, like, okay, like, what did I really lose in life? Like, nothing really. If pretend I die and there's nothing after me, okay, how am I going to know the difference?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I don't understand why people have so much of a, I don't know how to say this nicely, but like, a hatred, and like, why do you care so much? Like what someone else believes and what they, especially if they're a religion who's not trying to proselytize or whatever the word is for it, but they're not trying to convert. They're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to shove it down your throat. They're literally just minding their own business and being who they are. And so I don't understand why it causes that.
For sure. I mean, in Judaism is notoriously difficult to convert to. If anything, we push people away.
That's what they told me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. What are some of the customs that you've learned and you're like, oh wow, I never knew this. This makes me feel great. I really like this. So you mentioned sneers. You also mentioned. I was watching some of your videos. You mentioned. I think you talked about the mikvahs.
Yeah. The mikvah. The mikvah was like, it's like sometimes the things that I learn are so foreign to me. And that's the fault of, I just think, the education system and the media just not educating other people that like this type of culture and belief does exist. Because like when the kids are telling me these things, yeah, and then we take this to the mikveh, I can't use that water bottle yet. And I was like, what? And I was like, I'm like, you're lying. Or the same thing with the shoes. I made a video. They're fighting with each other. You're doing the wrong shoe first. And I said, you need to stop micromanaging your little sister and leave her alone. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It's an Avera. It's not allowed. And I was like, what? So then I was like, you're lying. And then I was like, no, it has to be. So then I said, are you serious right now? There's actually a rule about it. He's like, yes, there is. And then he goes about the rule about, how you're supposed to do it. So then I was like, okay, now I know. You're not just being silly. You're not just trying to bully your little sister. Like, you're trying to actually, okay, there's a rule. And so, like, I know, but so much of that is so, like, foreign to me. And that's why I've said before in interviews and podcasts that I'm working on writing a children's book where it helps. I want to write it where it's about navigating these things, about learning this stuff. And maybe that way when kids read it, or I intend to read to my kids in the future, books that they don't think it's weird when they see a kid with tzitzis or yarmulke. They don't think it's weird that another kid doesn't believe in Santa. Like, they don't think it's weird if maybe they have different shoes on or they don't play because of Shabbos. Like, I don't want my kids to grow up thinking like, well, they're just weird then, because they're not used to seeing it in anything else. So I think it should become a lot more normalized. And then that would definitely help fight a lot of the issues that we find from anti-Semitism.
Yeah, most definitely. That's awesome. Now, I want to touch on something which you mentioned earlier, which is you are actually a trained singer, specifically a trained opera singer.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How did you begin doing this? And is this something you plan to do full time?
Yeah, so opera can be a full-time job, but it's also seasonal. Like, I started when I was 12. I got my first lead role with Sarasota Youth Opera. I'm from Sarasota. At age 14, and then I went to school for it and basically just kept following my path and kept doing auditions and kept getting things. And now I sing for Palm Beach Opera. I just had my audition to get into another tier of their program. We'll see if I get it. If not, I'll just continue where I'm at and with all my kids as well. And I love it. It's definitely culturally immersive. Like, I've lived in Germany. I've lived in different states because of it, and that's why I know a lot of the different diction and sounds for the Yiddish or the Hebrew. It's very easy for me because that's what we study a lot in opera.
That's so cool. So were your family surprised? Like, how does she know this? No one knows this pronunciation.
Well, yeah, like, they were always like, oh wow, good job. And then I started to explain for the kids. They were like, no, it's this. And then I'd get it the first time, and then they'd be like, okay, yeah. And kids don't realize, like, because half the time they would have those conversations with me, they don't even realize I'm not Jewish. Like, they just think maybe I never heard that name or something.
Right.
And then the moms and the families would be like, oh yeah, like, nice job. Like, wow, I can't believe you got the name right. And then online, people would freak out and be like, I can't believe, say this, say that, say this name. Do you know what this is? And then they would comment all that stuff. And then I make the videos.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Adriana, I'm now going to ask you a question which I ask all of our guests. If someone who is not Jewish approaches you and wants to help in the fight against anti-Semitism, what should they do?
I would just say to constantly show love and compassion, even towards those who are showing hate. And to try to normalize it in the sense, like, if somebody has said to me, and I've had people say things to me sometimes like, oh, they try to start off, that's really weird, that must suck, that's really this. You just kind of respond to them back, well, why do you feel that way? Because I actually live that life, or I actually do that work, or I actually know someone like that, and I don't feel that way. Why is it weird? And when you ask the question back of why they feel that way, usually their answer is, well, because it just is, or it's a cult, or that's just annoying. And I'm like, but how does it bother you? And it really is none of your concern, essentially. But it's just, you need to make sure that it just becomes normalized, because even though it wasn't normalized to me at first, as I show in my videos, once I learn it, now it is my normal. And it's just another thing that I've added to my educational background and cultural, like, acceptance, that now I can just, yes, this is how Jewish people eat, and this is how I eat, and it's whatever.
Yeah. You eat bacon, we eat bacon. Other than that, we're the same.
I might just start eating bacon from now on. Seriously, it was like the best. You guys are not missing out. If you've never had bacon, you're not missing out. It's really good.
Such a good endorsement for Kashrut. Adriana, what have you got going on? What have you got coming up, and where can people find you?
So you can follow my TikTok, which is non-Jewish nanny, and then Instagram, which I'm on more, and I like more actually because people can message me and they can comment and we can engage more together so I can find out what type of content you like with the same handle, non-Jewish nanny. I'm going on a Pesach program, which is going to kick off an entire new series of me learning the ins and outs of Pesach, which I am so excited for, and also know I'm going to be mind blown because, like I said, I know a lot about the kosher world and the Jewish world, but Pesach is a kosher world of its own, and like,
Yes.
I have my work cut out for me, but I am so excited.
Listen, in this time next year, you're going to be leading the Seder. I guarantee it.
That's so
Adriana,
funny.
Adriana Rosie, thank you so much for coming on Podcast Against Antisemitism.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I can try to make a difference for the silly videos I make.